This is the Fox News Rundown.
Wednesday, July 27th, 2022.
I'm Jessica Rosenthal. A deadly drug is pouring into the country. Thousands of Americans are dying, and lawmakers are arguing over the solution, as some in law enforcement say a sense of urgency is missing.
So it's really sad, and it's very, very negligent on behalf of the government that they're not stepping up and they're not doing the job to protect the citizens first of America.
This week, senators held a hearing on opioids and synthetic opioids, especially fentanyl, as it pours into the country at an alarming rate. Fox's Bill Malugion's been reporting from the border for months, and not just on the number of people crossing in.
So in two separate incidents back-to-back, more than 50,000 fentanyl pills found at the Nogales, Arizona port of entry.
That was just a couple of weeks ago, around the time when the DEA in Los Angeles announced they had seized roughly 1 million fake pills containing fentanyl in Inglewood, saying in a statement that in the first 4 months of this year, fentanyl-related seizures were up 64%. Last year, over 3 million fentanyl pills were seized, which they said was nearly a threefold increase over 2020. And that's just the Los Angeles area. In the hearing, Louisiana Republican Senator Bill Cassidy said last year saw the largest increase in opioid deaths in 50 years. More than 100,000 people died.
We've got to control that border. If there's a message I wish the administration to get, use your tools to control.
But Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy questioned the border argument.
A lot of our colleagues think that by putting up this wall on the border, you're going to stop fentanyl from coming into the country. The reality is fentanyl is coming in through the ports. And so we can make investments, but the idea that it's the unwalled portions of the border where the fentanyl is pouring in is just not what the facts bear out.
And when it comes to the ports, Senator Cassidy noted that cartels ship in fentanyl made with Chinese ingredients and chemicals through the mail and declare the packages are worth less than $800 to avoid CBP inspections.
Fentanyl, obviously, is a very powerful synthetic opioid. It's made in labs. It's not plant-based. It's very addictive. It's very cheap. The cartels are taking total advantage of the addicted population and the market in America, and they're poisoning our country.
Derek Maltz is a former DEA special agent.
I don't even look at fentanyl anymore as a drug because it's actually killing at historic levels. Like we've never seen this in the history of the country. And that's part of the problem now. The lawmakers and some of the government officials, they're still talking with the old, antiquated talking points on the opioid crisis when kids were like taking legitimate prescription pills, oxycodone, and different types of opioids that they were getting from the doctors and from the pill bottles, and they were all real drugs. These are fake drugs. These are fake prescriptions. They're not real opioids. It's fentanyl made in labs, and it's killing because they don't have like chemists that are mixing up the chemicals and making sure there's a small amount, and it only takes 2 milligrams to kill. So it's a game changer in the crisis in America.
But people aren't necessarily buying fentanyl, right? Like you said, they're buying a pill that they think is maybe like an oxycodone or a hydrocodone, and it's actually a counterfeit and it's laced with fentanyl. Is that sort of what's happening?
Yes. Well, see, like what's happening is like the younger generation, you're hearing about a lot of 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds that are dying from these fake pills. They're going out trying to buy legitimate type prescription drugs like Xanax or, oxycodone or Adderall or Percocet because for some reason, they either have anxiety or they have some type of, issue going on that they think these drugs are going to help them. They definitely have no idea that the pills that they're buying are fake. They're coming from these filthy labs in Mexico, and they're going to kill them. So there's a whole new type of user because the internet and the social media sites is giving people access that they never had before. Wow. Because they're able to sell this stuff, and the younger generation is buying it. There's also a population of people that are very severely addicted that know this fentanyl on the streets. They want to buy fentanyl because fentanyl is going to give them the best high. And they really don't pay attention to whether or not it's going to kill them or not. They just need their high. And then there's a lot of casual drug users that may go out on a Friday night to use cocaine. They snort a couple of lines of cocaine, but they have no idea that the Mexican cartels are putting fentanyl in this cocaine. So they're dying and they have no idea it has fentanyl.
Another issue that came up, and you just sort of referenced it there in the Senate hearing, is where all this is coming from, right? Physically, it's coming from Mexico, but you and I have talked about this before. A lot of the ingredients are coming from China. We know the Chinese government has rules against manufacturing and producing fentanyl. Still, it somehow gets to Mexico. Senator Cassidy was among those who was like, this is the Chinese Communist government. If they want to stop the shipment of fentanyl ingredients, they just would. Do they just not want to?
Well, look, there's a lot of people, including myself, that believe this is another tool in the Communist Party of China's toolbox to destabilize and destroy America. So it's part of their unrestricted warfare. Right now, I personally believe, based on all my years of experience and understanding of this issue, they are using the Mexican cartels as the proxy to destroy America, just like Hezbollah is used by Iran as a proxy to do the dirty work for Iran. And it's the same concept. At first, they were actually sending mass amounts of fentanyl directly to America in the mail services through the internet or the dark web. But now they started pushing their product directly to Mexico. And even now they're pushing like multi-ton quantities of precursor chemicals into the cartel's lab. So they're making it in Mexico now. So it's an evolution. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I was fortunate enough to be the head of the Special Operations Division to follow this evolution, they started bombing America back in like 2008, 2009 with synthetic cannabinoids and synthetic cathinones, like K2, spice, bath salt.
Yeah.
And nobody in America knew what that stuff was. It was all coming from Wuhan-style labs. And that was going on for several years. And it hit us by surprise. Like, I was the head of the operation. I never heard of, synthetic marijuana, K2 spice. They're selling it in these little bags, attracting kids, Scooby snacks and King Kong and all these colorful labels. And what was happening is these kids were smoking this stuff and they were getting seriously sick, respiratory illnesses. They were dying in some cases. Emergency room admissions were going up. This started in, like I said, around 2009 or so. And then in about 2012, we started seeing fentanyl coming from these same labs. So they changed from pretty much the synthetic cannabinoids, cathinones to fentanyl. Then we started seeing all these deaths in America. As a matter of fact, in 2014, when I was still in charge of this operation, we started something called Operation Deadly Merchant, because for the first time, we started seeing mass amounts of deaths in America with fentanyl on the streets, laced in heroin at the time, okay, primarily heroin, and we had no idea what was going on. It was all coming from these labs. And then this was going on every year, was picking up momentum. We saw more and more Mexican cartel involvement. We saw Dominican distribution networks involved as well. But then when President Trump started putting pressure on China to classify their analogs and to control their analogs, the exports, then we started seeing another shift. Now the Chinese were sending pure fentanyl right to Mexico, which was then being mixed in all types of drugs. And what was happening is we started seeing more and more deaths. So the deaths were escalating because it was pure fentanyl. And now what we're seeing is the cartels are making this stuff in the labs, and they're now capitalizing on the pill market because Americans are so addicted to prescription pills. The cartels are now making a business decision with their creative and deceptive marketing plan to get as many people hooked on this drug to maximize profits. But unfortunately, it's killing Americans at record levels.
Wow. That's terrifying. Derek,
yes.
Talk to me about the border, because we see these large busts happening. There was a huge one a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles. I know you know about it.
Yep.
Those men driving through Tulare County back in June, they didn't show up for their court hearing last week. They had thousands of fentanyl pills. But we also hear about these, 500,000 gotaways, people sneaking across the border just this fiscal year alone. And members of Congress were just at the border this week, Republicans begging for something to be done about the border. But then in the Senate hearing, you had others say, well, a lot of these drugs, these drug busts are happening at ports. Where are we in your mind on the border? What should be done at the border regarding fentanyl, regarding drugs that isn't being done?
Well, for one, I was down in Arizona. I was down in Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. I got briefed up by the top experts in border security, former Homeland Security officials. These guys are my friends. listen to the Border Patrol, listen to the DPS in Texas. The bottom line is they have to finish the wall, and they have to force all traffic into America through the ports of entry. That's number one. Then we can put all the best resources and the latest and greatest technology, screening equipment, right there at the port of entry so we can maximize the interdictions of drugs and we can properly investigate all the immigrants that are coming in through the port of entry. If you have these openings in the wall, the cartels are taking total advantage. They're flooding the zone with the Border Patrol. They're sending their drugs, their high-value targets. They're bringing their money and the guns southbound because it's a wide-open border. And there's plenty of drugs that are coming through in between the port of entries. I do agree that the majority of the drugs in the tractor trailers are coming through the port of entries, right? But you got to understand, the problem is that the Border Patrol is inundated with migrant processing and bureaucratic paperwork, babysitting. They can't do border security. And they're doing a great job considering they don't have resources. That's why you just saw another recent 5,000 pounds of methamphetamine that they seized in California. Back in November, they seized 17,500 pounds of meth, 400 pounds of fentanyl. They're seizing a lot of drugs, despite the fact that they have such limited resources and the morale is down really low right now because they're not properly supported. They can't do the job that they were signed up for. So it's a total negligence on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security, the White House, and everyone else responsible for security of our country. And the gotaways, to be honest with you, is the most scary part of it from my standpoint, because we investigated in Project Cassandra Hezbollah's role with the Mexican drug cartels. We exposed that while I was at the Special Operations Division, and we watched the intricate relationships building between Hezbollah, one of the world's most serious, terrorist organizations. They're all over that region. So we have no idea. All these known gotaways that they're reporting for $55,000 a month, we don't even know who these people are, where they came from, what their motive is, why are they here, what are they going to do? They could be plotting stuff every day of the week right here in our backyards, and we wouldn't even know who they are or where they are. That's scary. Of course, you have to get more resources for law enforcement. You have to get more technology for law enforcement in CBP, and you have to buy the latest and greatest stuff because we're at war with these countries. That's the bottom line. It legitimately is. You can say what you want. People think this is a drug crisis. This is a mass poisoning on our future generation. And if we keep losing hundreds of thousands a year, who's going to be in the military? Who's going to be the pilots and the doctors and the lawyers and the bus drivers and the teachers? They're not going to be around because we're losing too many kids. So it's really sad, and it's very, very negligent on behalf of the government that they're not stepping up and they're not doing the job to protect the citizens first of America.
Derek Maltz, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and have a great day.